The following audio may contain the personal testimonials of some OPTAVIA coaches or clients of OPTAVIA. The results relayed in these messages are based on the unique experiences of the participants, and we cannot guarantee like or similar outcomes. While you may be inspired by these accounts, please note that any stories of success have not been verified, and your individual path to optimal health will vary. As always, it is our recommendation that you consult with a healthcare provider before starting a weight loss program. Yours in health, the OPTAVIA team.
Welcome everyone to the Habits of Health. We love to get together as an OPTAVIA community on Wednesday evenings and really just dive in a little deeper to learning the things that are going to help us with our long-term optimal health. Now, some of you joining us, you may be a client on our program, you may be a coach, maybe you are one of our health professionals, maybe you're just checking things out. But whoever you are, we are glad that you are here, and especially a big welcome to first-time listeners. And we want to really help you just be part of this community and to dive into our LifeBook. And the last several weeks, whether you've joined us live or if you've come on our YouTube channel or our podcast channel, we've been just going through each element in the LifeBook in our new Habits of Health transformational system that Dr. Wayne Scott Anderson has written for us. And we actually have a really fun treat tonight because our special guest is Dr. A himself. Dr. A, you want to come on and say hello to everybody?
Absolutely, Amber. Thank you. And welcome, everybody. Very excited to have you guys be here with you guys tonight. And it's going to be exciting. This is actually a pivotal element, an element that really sets up for everything. You know, 70% of us are overweight. Actually, now 9 states in our union have gone over 35% having obesity. So it's a real problem. And we're going to talk about a really elegant solution that's taken almost 2 decades to really understand that you're being exposed to. And so this is kind of a really cool point in the elements in the LifeBook where we're going to, you know, we prepared you for, you know, for all the people around you, kind of the, you know, crabs trying to pull you back in the pot. We've talked about some of the emotional things you may be going through. We've talked about how important it is to understand the creative process. We've spent time on cues at your habit loops and how they work. And now we're getting ready to really, it's where the rubber hits the road. This is where we're, most of you have been on the program and are losing weight. But this is where we start really putting in those foundational pieces so that this Habits of Health allows you to have lifelong transformation, one healthy habit at a time.
I love that, Dr. A. And one thing that we really want people to get out of element 6 is we'll help you set a goal to reach your healthy weight as part of a lifelong transformation. We want to explore the phases of weight management and determine where you are and learn new habits to begin creating your healthy weight. And to your point, I think it's really interesting that the first 5 elements, none of those really talked about weight loss. It's really setting the stage. And I love how you talk in the element about how do you create a healthy weight? You create it. And really that focus on creation is so huge. Can you talk a little bit about why we focus on creating a healthy weight versus a lot of people, a lot of things out there that are mainly focused on just losing weight?
Yeah, no, it's critical. You know, we're in the United States and even all over the world, we're problem solvers. We like to solve problems. So stuff gets in the way and we try to solve it. And if you think about it, when you solve a problem, you don't really create anything. You just get away from something you don't want, right? So what we're actually doing foundationally through the LifeBook over the next year, we're putting you in position to truly create optimal health and well-being, to put you on this trail, on this path that will lead you upwards towards what you want, not what you don't want, not getting away from what you don't want, but actually creating what you want. And it's really powerful. Amber, you know, it kind of brings your brain together, brings this part of your brain and the emotional part of your brain and has them work for each other. Unfortunately, most people, when they go to lose weight, they're doing it for an emotional reason. They're literally feeling this, some type of conflict, whether they're doctor told them that, they're about ready to get diabetes, they're pre-diabetic. It could be a relative that said, you don't look good, or they may see a picture, or there's something that creates inside of them an emotion. And so what they say is, you know what, a button flies off, they're at a party and almost kills somebody. It's their sign that they need to lose weight. And the reality of that is that emotion puts them into action. So they decide to go find many times the latest, greatest, whatever's on the internet, whatever they see on TV, what some star's doing. And so they start on this process, and what happens is they'll lose a little weight and they'll feel better because it was their whole reason for doing was based on emotional conflict. And so they would start, and then they feel better, which leads to less action. Then they gain the weight back. And that yo-yoing that occurs is because they're not really they're not creating structural tension. In the earlier elements, we talked about structural dynamics, how important they are. And it simply means you know where you want to go, you know where you are now, and basically over time, it moves you towards that because it's what you want. And that's really critical. And, you mentioned one of the key parts of this element is to know where you are right now. To be able to go where you want to go, you need to know where you are now. If you want to go to Chicago and you need to know where you are right now in order to be able to get out the map, or now obviously we just click on our Siri or our phone and it does it for us. But the analogy, of course, is that we need to know where we are currently, and then what are the progressive stages? Because what that will allow you to know is that you're creating long-term health. It's health gain. It's not weight loss. Losing weight lowers your risk for disease and will help you become healthier, have more energy. But in the first part, it's important to know that the end point isn't losing the weight. Because, if you lose 50 pounds and your goal is to lose 50 pounds, and let's say by some miraculous way, you find some way to do that. And usually it's a restrictive period where you do something you don't want to do, and you can't wait to get down that 50 pounds. If you do make it, as soon as you get done, boom, you stop doing it. You go out to some steakhouse or wherever your favorite watering hole is, and you end up eating, and then you start gaining your weight back because you reached your goal. Creating health, optimal health and well-being, that's why we show throughout the LifeBook, the book, the app, on the habitshealth.com, everything talks about this path towards better health and better well-being.
I agree, Dr. A. And one of the things, while I was reviewing this element again in my LifeBook personally today, and some of the things that really stood out to me was that you cited some statistics, and one of them was that 45 million Americans go on a diet to lose weight every year. 45 million Americans. And it, like you said, to your point, it's emotionally driven. It's, I don't feel good, or I'm on medications, or my pants don't fit, or somebody is giving me a hard time. My spouse is giving me a hard time. And, but 85% of those people, any weight that they do happen to lose, they gain it back within 2 years typically. And this was the kicker though for me, was the only habit created was the habit of dieting. And I was like, that's so true. Yeah. I mean, we want to help people create those healthy habits that are going to lead them towards that optimal health. And the other thing that I was thinking about was, a lot of times when we are setting a goal, maybe a weight loss goal, we hear people say things like, well, boy, I'd like to lose 50 pounds, but I'd be happy with 25. And maybe we ourselves have been guilty of this in the past, or many of us on this call are listening to the playback. And what would you say to this concept of just settling for less than what is actually healthy?
Yeah, well, the first thing is I take them wherever they are. And we talked about it early on in the beginning of the LifeBook. But what I want to do is create intrinsic motivation. Once people start the journey of optimal health and well-being is a journey of a lifetime. And as you learn the new habits, as they become internalized and you're able to do them automatically, and we'll talk about it a little bit later about willpower, but what happens is now you're making the right choices normally. And as you get older, and I was just talking to someone today about this, as you get older, our body loses some of its buffering abilities, and things we could do when we were 20, we can't do when we're 40, 60, and 80. And what we want to do is build in this new choices that are automated that you do unconsciously that all lead to health. So I take people where they are. If they say they only want to lose 10 pounds, great, let's get started. And then, including this element, my goal is to make them aware that as they progressively lose weight and gain health, everything changes. And as they learn the habits of health in the different key areas, all 6 macro habits, which we cover throughout the Habits Health system, they're starting to eat better. They're hydrating their body properly. They're managing their weight better. They're moving better. They're sleeping better. They have more energy during the day. Their mind becomes healthier. They're able to now modify the surroundings to take away the temptations. And all those things are part of that journey. So the goal is that let's get you started. And as we're moving, we build what we call self-efficacy. Self-efficacy, in essence, is that because we're doing something that's small enough, we can do it every day. So if that weight loss goal is smaller than really, if you really looked where you'd be actually be in the green in your waist circumference and all the things we talk about in this element, as well as in the book, the Habits Health book, is that as you start in that direction, you'll start building the power of the skills and the motivation. You'll start to see and reinforce how much better you feel, how much better people are saying things. They're giving you compliments. Wow, you look better. Did you change your hair? And then they start realizing, wow, you just lost 15 pounds and you're feeling better. You started motion. Your skin is clearing up. You're eating the right things. You're not eating ultra processed food. And all these things are additive that add into motion. That's why this chapter, when we talk about, it's creating health. It's about creating what's necessary. So my dogs right now are basically protecting. I apologize. I forgot to close my door. But basically, we're creating health. We're learning the things, and each way we're reinforcing, creating a micro environment of health. Put you in position so all these little habits, how you sleep, they all interact together, and we're doing it in such micro steps that you're able to get it done.
I love that. And, I think when it comes down to it, sometimes we're putting this idea in our head that hitting a number on a scale is going to make us happy, that it's going to bring us happiness in our life. And the way I think of it is the only thing that can make you happy is you. You choose to be happy. And honestly, I encourage you, even if you do have the 50 pounds to lose, you're right at the beginning of your journey. Be happy right now where you are, and what do you want to create? Because happiness isn't determined by a number on a scale or a number in your bank account, or it's really something that you can choose, which I think you emphasized so well in the first 5 elements, Dr. A, is really, taking personal responsibility for your life. And when you realize that, but you can go, now what do I want to create? Do I want to create more energy? Do I want to create things that I can do in my life by being healthier, being around longer with my family?
Yeah, and I actually, here's something else that I talk about a little bit in the book, but I think is so important, especially for people that are, they say, oh, I don't know if I can do without my food, right? I love my food. So, when there's a difference between pleasure and satisfaction. Pleasure is immediate gratification. It's at that moment you're lighting up the area in your brain called the nucleus accumbens. Sorry, I'm going to do a little bit of doctor stuff here. And it lights up and it creates pleasure and it creates reward and you release dopamine. And so we feel that only while we're doing it. That's why somebody will say, oh my gosh, I pulled out a tub of Haagen-Dazs ice cream and I started eating it and I ate the whole thing and I don't know why. Well, the reason why, the only time you're getting pleasure is when you're actually touching that ice cream. It's touching your mouth. You feel the coldness of it. It brings back something when you were a kid and you had an ice cream cone. All those things are interrelated in that. But if you decide, you know what, I'm not going to have ice cream. I'm actually going to take out one of our fuelings, where I can make that has 100 calories in it and it's low glycemic and has protein and all the things we want. And I'm going to take that because even though maybe that's not quite the quality of this thick, rich, laden hot fudge sundae or whatever, what it does is it's part of what you've decided is a secondary choice that's going to help you reach a healthy weight. And that then, when you leave that situation because you made the right choice, you have satisfaction. Satisfaction is defined as something that lasts longer. So, you can sleep in the morning, put the snooze alarm, or the night before you could actually call your neighbor and say, let's go for a walk. And even though when you get up, start the walk, you may think, oh my goodness. And then you get going. By the end of the walk, the rest of the day, you can smile and say, you know what? I really am satisfied. I made the right choice and it lasts all day. It's not just when you're doing it. So really big difference there. And I think if people start to grasp around it, it's going to make it so easy for them over time to start installing the habits that they'll do automatically.
I love that. And, you know, I think that we've really covered well this idea, this notion of creating a healthy weight versus just running away from what you don't want, running away from problems. And so that would bring us to, let's talk a little bit about the different weight management phases, because a lot of times, to your point, some people start in the overweight or obese phase, and then they go to that weight loss phase. 45 million Americans every year are going from that first phase to that phase 1 weight loss phase. And some of them may reach their healthy weight, some don't. And then it's back that yo-yo cycle to phase 1 again, to weight loss. And what we really want to do is help people to realize that that phase 2, that healthy weight, is actually just one phase, and there's 2 more after that, the phase 3 optimization, phase 4 longevity. And let's talk a little bit about what a healthy weight looks like, because sometimes I think it's actually a little bit controversial, which is interesting to me. The BMI chart. Why, Dr. A? Why does the BMI chart have to be controversial?
Yeah, well, you know, the bottom line is you can actually have a normal BMI and still be have a risk for disease because of central adiposity. So in other words, let's say you're someone that that basically has not exercised and you have very little muscle, and so but you have still have the central adiposity, which means the visceral fat, the fat in the middle around your belly, kind of like I'm talking about the apple versus the pear. The apple, kind of, with you have a belly and they have that muffin. That basically is dangerous. So that's why, so by itself, but I want to say something about the BMI chart, why it's so powerful. It's really easy, doesn't cost anything, takes a second to use. You simply look over at your height on the vertical axis and your weight on the horizontal axis, and you look to see if you're in the red, you're at high risk for disease. If you're in the orange, you're a little bit lower, green, and in the blue, where you get to the point you're really getting underweight. Probably, we'll talk about that when we get to ultra health, but basically, usually what happens when you get too low, the reason why statistically you're at risk is because these are usually people that are sick and they're not eating or able to digest food, and they're in a negative catabolic state. But my point is that by itself, it's really easy. When you combine it with the waist circumference, which is the next, I think probably your next slide. Yeah, waist circumference, which you measure just above the ala of your pelvis. The ala are the wings. Those are the pelvic bones as they stick out on the top. If you just kind of feel right above the top, go down the side of your belly and feel right above the top, if you can feel them, that's where you want to weigh. It's very close to the umbilicus, close to your belly button. And when you measure there, it gives us an idea of what the amount of belly fat you have. And when you take those two and put them together, then you have a pretty good index, and they're both so easy, they don't require anything more than that. Now, if you have a doctor or you want to check it more detail, and it'll become more important as you go towards ultra health, because we're going to look at your body composition. But what we want to do in the first is find out kind of where you are in risk. So in other words, just like we talked about the creative process, you know, what phase are you in? You want to know that. And you want to know basically what your BMI is, what your waist circumference is. And once you figure that out, it kind of gives you where you are. Desired outcome is optimal health and well-being. And I want to just spend a moment on that before we go on. Optimal health, people will go, man, I'm 100 pounds overweight. I can't even think about optimal health. Yes, you can. You think about it's part of your future. Now, it may be your future 1-2 years from now. You know, on average, it takes, depending on how much weight it may take you. We have people that have been with us now several years, and it took them a while to get there. So make sure you realize that in the LifeBook, we go at your phase. It may take you more than a year to reach your healthy weight. And that's okay if you have a whole bunch of weight to lose. But the whole point is you're incrementally getting better. And because we're focusing on the creative process and we're leading from that future, everything we do today, we want to do more of what leads us to that future, be educated, because there's a million choices we can make every day. So if we know which choices we make because we know where we're going, so optimal health may be a ways off, but whether you're 20 years old and you're running triathlons, or you're 80 years old and you have an open heart operation, there's still an optimal for you. And that's our whole point, to help you become as good as you can be, because we know one thing, The only thing that creates sustainable change is lifestyle, by changing our lifestyle and doing the actions that move us forward. So that's what this is all about. It's about, we know there's thousands of studies that show the opportunity to live longer in a healthier state is only available if we make these better choices. Now, can we guarantee you're going to live longer? Of course not. You know, you could be on an airplane, or a meteor could come down out of the sky. So we can't tell you whether you're going to live longer, but we can tell you this: if you make the right choices, statistically, you have a better opportunity. Not because it's OPTAVIA, not because it's the habits of health, but we know when we make better choices, it gives us a higher probability to be able to live longer in a healthier state.
I love that. And so I think that what I'm hearing you say is, don't look at the BMI chart and say, this chart is judging me. Yeah. We look at the BMI chart and we say, this is just the scientific evidence that supports being in these healthy ranges is going to lower your risk for disease. Having that waist circumference for a man, if you're under that 37 inches, for a woman, if you're under that 31.5 inches, and in conjunction with that BMI chart, you're lowering your risk for disease. We're not saying you have to look a certain way or stand up, hold up to any supermodel standards or crazy magazines that are airbrushed anyway. This is about health. This is about the science that supports that.
Yeah, and just to make a parallel to that, and we'll talk about it when we get to the later elements. But longevity, the actuarial tables tell us, it's just the facts. The facts are, as a female, you have the potential to live to 85, as a male to 80. But if we do all these things right, because that's taken on the general population, right? If we can actually do the things that are necessary, we have the potential to change our stars and change our story. And that's what the LifeBook is all about. And we took your story where it is now. We're now writing your new story. We're helping you now focus. Remember, creating health is about knowing what you want and then doing the secondary things that support it, which is what the LifeBook, the book, the app, the habitshealth.com site, all those things are about, giving you more tools in your toolbox so you can now move forward and make it easy. If the difference is, when I wrote the first book 12 years ago, I gave you the knowledge and I had a little workbook. You could do a little of this stuff. Now we have a comprehensive system that if you're using this app daily, and by the way, we just upgraded the app. They made a whole bunch of corrections based on everyone's feedback to make it better. By using your LifeBook, you put yourself at a higher probability of going the right way, because now you have a roadmap.
I love that. So, Doctor, I want to take a minute now and bring on a guest. I asked Jared Smithson if he would come on, and I know this guy pretty well. He's my husband. If he would come on and share with us a little bit about his story with reaching a healthy weight and maybe some of the things that went along with that.
Yeah. So 15 years ago, Amber decided that she was going to improve her health. Our second son was born about that time, and she dropped 35 pounds in about 7 months. We didn't know anything about OPTAVIA at the time. And so I started to change a few of my habits. What I really knew well was exercise. I was an athlete my whole life, so I went back to exercising really hard. And Amber and I would talk about health all the time. And her mom became a coach about 11 and a half years ago, and she started to approach me knowing that I had been through this struggle. After Amber lost her weight, in the next about 4 years, I lost 20 pounds 4 times. I'd lose it, gain it, lose it, gain it. And my heaviest weight was 228 pounds. And I live best at about 175 to 180 pounds. I was going back to what Dr. A said at the very beginning. I was kidding myself. And it was because I didn't have a clear vision of what I wanted in my future. And I thought I knew everything. I looked at that BMI chart. I thought that it was mocking me. I was like, oh no, I can't be, I'm just big boned, right? Well, I still have the same bones that I had 15 years before when I still weighed 175 pounds. My bones didn't naturally double in size and weight. And just in the last few years, I started to ask myself, if knowledge equals results, Jared, then what do you really know? And I go back to 10 years ago when I was still struggling with my weight, and I knew some things, but there were pieces that I was missing. And plugging into the OPTAVIA community, having a coach, having that accountability that taught me about personal integrity, being able to go through the habits of health and the new transformational system. The old system is what converted us to OPTAVIA. The new system, 1,000,000 times better. I would just plead with you, if you want your life to change and you want it to look like what you want, get into this thing. Start asking yourself the questions and designing the life that you want to look like. You know, Amber asked me one question after I lost my last 30 pounds on the OPTAVIA program. She asked me, so what now? And I didn't have an answer, but over the last decade, I've developed that answer because I made a shift from saying, you know what? It's no longer deprivation. Oh, I can't have this. I made a decision that I wanted to be a different person. I wanted to be the person that I thought of in my head. And one of the things that has been very eye-opening that I've been very conscious of over the last decade is most people, they look for a finish line. Dr. A talked about this with weight goals and stuff. And over the last decade, Amber and I, we've accomplished a lot of things, pretty cool things. And I always get there and I'm kind of like, because my expectation of what I would feel like at the end was totally different than what the real feeling was when I crossed that finish line. And what I've realized is the journey and the pride that I took in the work to accomplish that is where the fulfillment in life comes from. So now I'm not at the end of my health journey. I turned 45 years old this year. I'm in the best shape of my life, and I'm going to get better. There's proof of it in our community of people who are 60, 70, 80 years old who are in better shape than I am. So I got people to chase. I got goals to chase. So be really, really clear about what you want to create. And then don't be afraid to put in the work for it, because the work is where you're going to get the most fulfillment in your life.
Wow, I love that, Jared. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing. And Dr. A, we just have a minute or two left, but I'd love for you to wrap us up and talk a little bit about willpower.
Yeah, and you know, I'll make this quick, but this element's a little different. We have 3 reflective questions we ask in every element. In this element, I focus specifically because I want to make sure as we really focus on starting to know what's necessary and the secondary choices to really move the habits that will help you reach and maintain a healthy weight, because most people don't, right? We just said 85% of people that don't, when they tried to do it, put something outside of them. So we're going to do it a very different way. We're going to focus on creating health, which creates structural tension, which points you in the right direction. If you're looking up at the ceiling, focusing on what you want, and then you look down at the floor and think of one reason why you can't do it, you can't see what's going on up here. So we fully, totally reorient you around focusing on what you want to create, what's your future, all the things that Jared just talked about. Second, use structural tension. We're going to spend the next several elements laying out all the secondary choices that you're going to work on to develop in little micro habits, the things that will allow you to thrive, build in this new foundation so your actual behaviors and a subconscious level will change. Because what we know is this: willpower will fail you. It'll fail you every day under any adversity. It's something we can do just for a little bit of time. So we want to harness your willpower to just focus on the habits you're working on in micro steps, so you have enough to get it done every day till it becomes automated, which takes on average, as we talked about earlier in one of the earlier elements, about 2 months. And the third thing is we want you to realize as you start building these habits, you're building a foundation so all the things in your life change. I got to watch Amber. I've watched Amber and Jared since they were clients and since they were coaches many years ago. And everything they said is validated. They are very different. And the thing that's changed the most is actually right here, because it's how we think when we can put our mind where we want, when we want it, for as long as we want. And by the end of this year, as we go through, we touched a little bit on earlier elements, but we're going to go through with you and with your coach and your community and using these amazing feelings and other pieces we're going to use. The habits of healthy weight management are going to be mastered by you because you're doing the work to make it a reality. So Amber, thank you so much for having me on. I love these calls. I'm so excited. I was watching in the chat all the people that are on this journey, and I'm really proud of you guys. And let's go out, change our health, help our families, our communities, and let's change the world together. God bless. See you guys.
This audio may have contained the personal testimonials of some OPTAVIA coaches or clients of OPTAVIA. The results relayed in these messages are based on the unique experiences of the participants, and we cannot guarantee like or similar outcomes. While you may be inspired by these accounts, please note that any stories of success have not been verified and your individual path to optimal health will vary. As always, it is our recommendation that you consult with a healthcare provider before starting a weight loss program. Yours in health, the OPTAVIA team.